If you just bought this package of date sugar and you're wondering, how in the world do I use this? I'm going to help you out. The first and easiest way to introduce date sugar into your diet as you start to replace your white sugar or your other sugar that you're using now with a natural sugar substitute, such as date sugar, is I would add it to a smoothie. And so normally what I would do is I would put some greens, I would put some fruit like strawberries or peaches. You can use yogurt if you like dairy or any other things that you like in here. You add a tablespoon or two of date sugar into it and boom, you have extra fiber and it sweetens your smoothie and it's delicious. Another really easy way you can use date sugar is by simply sprinkling it on top of your oatmeal in the morning. So if you just bought a package of date sugar, maybe you tried it in one of your grandma's recipes that's been passed down for generations, and you turned out with a drier cake or a drier cookie. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because when we make our date sugar, it's this outer part here that we keep. We just take out the pit and we keep the rest of the date intact. Well, this is the part that gives you all the fiber, which is good. We want to keep that. But what happens when you start to put it into a recipe is that it absorbs moisture because that's what fiber does. And so when you make a recipe, you want to either decrease the flour by 25% or you want to increase the liquid by 25%. So you could add more eggs or you could add some liquid. So you could add another egg or two to your recipe, or you could add more water or milk or whatever your liquid is in your recipe. And that will really help to keep it moist. If you don't want to play around and experiment in the kitchen, that's okay. You can just go to our website, puredate.com, PURDATE.com, and look at our recipes. And those are tried and true recipes that we have tested and adapted so that you can use date sugar in them. So I really encourage you when you're first learning how to use date sugar to go to our website and to our recipes, and that'll be your best bet. If you want the best product, we have a delicious chocolate cake, cinnamon rolls, pies, all kinds of things on our recipe website. And once you bake those and you feel more comfortable using date sugar, then you can branch out and try them in your own recipes. But remember, you want to decrease the flour by 25% or you want to increase the liquid by 25% at least. And sometimes those ratios can vary depending on the recipe. One thing to remember when you use date sugar is you can use a 1-to-1 ratio when you're subbing for white sugar or brown sugar in a recipe. However, date sugar is less sweet than white sugar, and so you're going to want to keep that in mind. And if you want it sweeter, you're going to want to add date sugar. But when you add date sugar, you're going to want to either decrease the flour like we talked about before, or you're going to want to increase the liquids, adding more water or milk or eggs. And that will give you a sweeter product. Another thing that I found useful in baking is what I'll do is I'll mix my date sugar with my liquid and I'll let it sit on the counter. So for example, if I have a cup of water in when I'm baking, say I'm baking a cake and it calls for a cup of water and a cup of date sugar. So what I would do is I would put the date sugar into the water and I would let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes to just let that date sugar rehydrate and then continue on baking the rest of my recipe. So another tip I can offer you when using date sugar is if it's a little bit clumpy, what you can do is you can just sift it like so before you use it. So it shouldn't take very long. And then if there's just a few like little clumps like that left over, you just kind of sift them out and it just turns into this really like fine date sugar like this. And that's really good when you're making a sauce, like a caramel sauce or a marinade. You would want to do that. If you're baking a cake, that's really not necessary unless the clumps are just really large and hard. Another useful tip when using date sugar is if you're making a sauce or a marinade, you're going to want to stir it frequently so that it doesn't clump up. And you're going to want to add probably more liquid to the sauce than you normally would in your recipe, again, because the date sugar has so much fiber in it. And you can really, it just depends on how thin you want the caramel sauce. You can keep adding the milk or the water to make it as thin as you want it, or the frosting. You can keep, it's going to take a lot more milk or water in the frosting than it would if you use regular powdered sugar. Because of the fiber, it absorbs the moisture. So don't get discouraged, just keep adding that liquid until it's exactly the consistency that you want. Even if the recipe says something else, just keep adding the water or the liquid until you're happy with it, because it depends on each batch of date sugar. Some are more dry than others. It depends on where you live. Sometimes if you live in a place that's more moist or a place that's more dry, you're going to need to add more liquid. All right, thank you for sticking with me. I hope those tips were helpful for you today, and always please leave comments at the bottom with questions, or just tell us what you made with date sugar.